The Victorian era, the hidden opium story. The Victorian Times conjures images of elegant ladies in elaborate gowns and powerful men running a global empire with a stiff upper lip. This was the face they showed the world. Pristine, proper, almost perfect. But behind the velvet curtains of London's most respectable homes, a secret was spreading. A poison, prescribed by doctors and sold right over the counter, was tearing their perfect world apart at the seams. This is the story of how one drug, opium, exposed the hypocrisy of the powerful and dragged the dark secrets of the aristocracy kicking and screaming into the light. This is how it ripped through every level of society, from the grimy docks of the East End to the gilded parlours of the West End, revealing the shocking double standards at the heart of an empire. The respectable poison. For a woman of status in Victorian London, life was a performance. Every word was judged, every emotion policed. It's no surprise that diagnoses of female hysteria were handed out for what we'd now call depression, anxiety, or just the soul-crushing boredom of living in a gilded cage. For these fashionable sicknesses, the cure was as common as afternoon tea: laudanum. Laudanum was the aspirin of its day, a potent tincture of alcohol mixed with about 10% powdered opium, though concentrations could vary. It was prescribed for pretty much everything: coughs, pain, trouble sleeping, menstrual cramps, you name it. Laudanum was the answer. Picture a young woman, let's call her Eleanor. She's fictional, but her story is all too real. Her husband is a rich industrialist, and her days are a blur of managing servants and attending painfully dull social events. She can't sleep and feels a quiet sadness she can't shake. Her trusted family doctor, meaning well, prescribes a few drops of laudanum. At first, it feels like a miracle. The drug wraps her in a warm, blissful calm, a perfect escape from her rigid life. Soon, a morning dose becomes just as vital as her morning coffee. Doctors and chemists sold these opium-based concoctions freely, with some even marketed as women's friends. In Eleanor's high society circles, this wasn't seen as an addiction. It was just a habit, a private comfort to get through the day. Literary giants like Elizabeth Barrett Browning and Samuel Taylor Coleridge were well-known laudanum users. Barrett Browning's reliance on it to manage her chronic illness was so total, it's said she spent a fortune on the drug. This was the acceptable face of opium, a medicinal tool for the brilliant and the frail. And no one batted an eye at bottles of Mother's Friend in the nursery, an opium-laced cordial used to quiet fussy babies, sometimes forever. The drug was hiding in plain sight. For the truly wealthy, there were even lavish options like silver-coated opium pills to hide the bitter taste. But as Eleanor's habit deepens into something more desperate, she learns what every addict does: tolerance. The respectable little bottle from the chemist doesn't work anymore. Her dependency is growing, and it demands more. To satisfy it, she'll have to cross a line, out of the drawing rooms of Mayfair, and into a world she was taught to fear. The underworld's allure. While the upper crust discreetly sipped laudanum, a very different opium story was playing out in the smog-choked alleys of the East End. In neighborhoods like Limehouse, a small Chinese community had settled near the docks, and with them came the opium den. These weren't the mystical palaces you read about in stories. Early reports described them as miserable, cramped rooms filled with men, Chinese sailors and locals, sprawled on filthy mattresses, the air thick with the sickly sweet smoke of vaporized opium. The press, always hungry for a scandal, painted these dens as pits of depravity and horror. They fueled a moral panic, often laced with racist fears of the yellow peril corrupting London from within. The same British Empire that fought 2 wars to force opium on China for profit was now demonizing Chinese people for using the drug on British soil. The elite publicly condemned the dens as a source of ruin, a problem for foreigners and the lower classes. Their own laudanum use? That was a private medical habit. Smoking opium in a den. That was a public moral misuse. But as the century crept on, a strange new crowd started slipping into these dens. Writers and gentlemen slummers. Charles Dickens was a fascinated observer, visiting dens to research his final unfinished novel, The Mystery of Edwin Drood, which opens with a choirmaster seeking oblivion in the East End. Sherlock Holmes famously declaring he abhorred the dull routine of existence, turned to a 7% solution of cocaine, but also occasionally visited opium dens to escape it all. This is where the 2 Londons crashed into each other. It was people like our Eleanor. Her addiction, born in a respectable doctor's office, had outgrown its polite container. Desperate for a stronger high, she finds her way to the very places her husband condemns in public. Here, in the dim, smoky light, the rigid class structures of Victorian England melted away. A wealthy aristocrat could be lying next to a sailor just off a ship, both chasing the same escape. The drug was the great equalizer, exposing the elite who built their world on moral superiority, now caught in the grip of the same vice they so publicly shamed. It's amazing how one substance could reveal the deep-seated contradictions of an entire society. If you're finding this trip into the dark side of history as fascinating as I do, please make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss what's coming next. The Great Unraveling? The truth? Hypocrites revealed? Maybe not. For the Victorian elite, the biggest fear wasn't addiction itself, but being found out. A scandal could destroy a family's reputation overnight. Overdoses among the wealthy were common, but they were almost never recorded that way. A young socialite's sudden death might be blamed on a weak heart or a fever, as the family doctor quietly signed a death certificate that protected their good name. The tragic death of Elizabeth Siddal, the famous pre-Raphaelite muse and wife of artist Dante Gabriel Rossetti, from a laudanum overdose in 1862, is a stark example of this hidden epidemic. The government made a clumsy attempt to get things under control. The 1868 Pharmacy Act was supposed to regulate the sale of poisons like opium, limiting their sale to registered chemists. There was no limit on how much a person could buy, and enforcement was weak, especially since the pharmacists themselves were profiting from the trade. It did little to stop the problem, and mainly just created a flimsy distinction between legitimate medical use and illegitimate recreational use, a line that was always blurry. As the century neared its end, the anti-opium movement got louder, but it was often driven by the same racist and classist attitudes of the era. The campaigns focused on the foreign vice of opium dens, while conveniently ignoring the gallons of laudanum being consumed in respectable homes. It wasn't until new painkillers like aspirin were invented and the medical understanding of addiction grew that the tide truly turned. The Dangerous Drugs Act of 1920 would finally bring strict prohibition, officially ending the era. But the story had already been written. Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray speaks of dens of horror where the memory of old sins could be destroyed by the madness of sins that were new, perfectly capturing the drug's dark allure. For every artist like Samuel Taylor Coleridge who famously claimed his poem Kubla Khan was born from an opium dream, there were countless others whose lives were wrecked by it. So, how did one drug expose London's twisted elite? Opium reflected the era's deepest hypocrisies, an empire that built its wealth on a global drug trade while condemning addiction at home. The fictional journey of Eleanor from her drawing room to the den is the story of this contradiction. The laudanum bottle in her medicine cabinet and the opium pipe in the East End were two sides of the same coin, symbols of a society hopelessly addicted to its own illusions. The smoke from London's opium dens cleared long ago, but the questions it left behind still hang in the air, about the lines we draw between medicine and vice, the secrets we keep behind closed doors, and that timeless human search for an escape from the dull routine of existence. If you want to explore more hidden histories, check out our videos on the darker side of Victorian life. Thanks for watching.